sometimes you see this question in Slido, you're not being involved in discussions. I think that comes up a lot. Like, they didn't invite me to the meeting, right? They only included me at the last minute. What would you say to everyone out there about how they can step into that culture? It's a cultural mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And shift that. What are some small steps, these actionable tips that we could apply?
This is a great question, and I think it's a common pain point for designers, right? And I think the key thing really is to embrace and to include, right? Meaning that, hey, while others may not include you, you can include them. You need to flip the card, right? And the very common thing we do as designers is that we are usually very good at running design sprints or collaborative workshops. And that is something, it's a given for us, but it's not a given for many, many other functions, right? And everybody has different walk of life. You don't always come into right after universities know how to run a workshop collaboratively. So I would say really anchor on this, because you have to change the process of how things are done to get yourself involved. So I think what you can do, right, really is just to reach out to your product counterparts or even engineer counterparts, right, in these discussions, right, or in the visionings. Sometimes it's just a matter of telling people what you want, because nobody can read your minds, and everybody has, their known way of working. That in my way, maybe I never work with designers, so I don't know what you want and how you can contribute. So go first, tell them that I want to be involved. And then second, I would say, bring some design thinking methodologies or processes onto the table to show your partners, right, what I can bring to the table that would add value to that process. So for example, right, we can do, what I usually do, share with my partner is that, hey, I have this mini presentation about what is this process about, because sometimes people need to see it, right, instead of you telling them. So I usually run through a deck, a small deck I built, and to show them that, hey, we can work on the vision strategy together, we can do the competitor analysis together, we can understand the user together, we can design together, we can build the user stories, this and that, right? You talk about the end-to-end process with them, and then tell them that I can help you with your next project, let's do it together. So I think this is the baby step, right, to make.
I think like the nature of how you get there is different in different cultures and of different companies. There's a great book about the speed of trust, about the power. If you have trust in your relationship, how much more you can do. Sometimes you're starting from a place where you don't have that trust, and so like, how do you build it? My suggestion, and I watched some folks I really admire do this at the beginning of my career, is like, just start by trying to add value. Like an example, this was again 20 years ago at eBay. My friend Luke Wroblewski went off, and he was one of the first designers invited into some conversations about strategy, where we were looking at international competitors. The team had these collections of screenshots from all these international competitors. Well, very few of them were in English. So he spent the night from the kickoff meeting to the follow-up the next day, painstakingly going through and translating all of the mock-ups into English and putting them into, at that point, Photoshop. This was grunt work, and no one asked him to do it, but he created a tremendous amount of value. Like the conversation was much more productive because he did that than it was prior to that, and that helped. The impression that people had was, oh, this guy really is helpful. And then he started to contribute more in conceptual work of like, well, that's an interesting way to frame the problem. Have you considered da 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 da? And they're like, wow, he's got great ideas also. And so it built this bridge of trust. And it started by creating value or adding value, and then secondly becoming essential, like creating enough value that people are like, oh my God, I couldn't do this work without you. And the other advantage or the other suggestion I would have, and this is exactly the story we just heard, is like, use your superpowers. You may not be an expert in finance, but you can probably express the data in some way that is better than the people who are experts in collecting the data can. Or you can help them tell a story of what they're trying to achieve. I can give two quick examples of that. One was from a long time ago where we were doing some work looking at the registration process. And this was back early enough that, believe it or not, it wasn't common to look at things as funnels and to look at things as growth graphs. They're like, oh, the numbers are going up every quarter, it's fine. And so we looked at how do we bring all of the data that we know in. We looked at the behavioral data. We looked at the customer support data. We looked at usability data. We brought all of that data in. We put it into a single visualization of the experience. And we talked about, okay, this is, yes, the numbers are going up, but look at the drop off that's happening. And look at what people are telling us the problem is. And that helped frame the problem and opportunity. And we leveraged our superpower to create a story that no one else could individually. And it was, again, not about design. It was about the team that was working on this, that was able to create these insights that then helped us figure out the right solution. The other more recent example was when I joined the Venmo team, we also had a new head of the business. And he had some great ideas about how he wanted to frame our strategic goals and what we were going after. And I again, volunteered. I'm like, how can I help? I'd love to assist. And so I got a copy of the deck that he was preparing to present to the all hands. And I was like, these are good ideas, but not wonderfully told as a story. We can do so much more. And so we spent a lot of energy to express the brand and to bring the data into a more visual storytelling way and to work on the narrative. And I was the tip of the spear, but then I brought in marketing design and I brought in content design and I brought in the data science team, and we were able to sort of help support and create that cross-functional conversation. So you have to just start from where you are, and it's not about is it perfect, but it is tomorrow better than it was yesterday.
As a designer, there's a whole cocktail of ways that you can contribute. What is that, and what makes sense in this context, and start expanding, snowballing on that, right? On that contribution. I'm curious to hear from you. Speaking of the impact of design on business, you've had a lot of experience. I'm sure you've experienced missed opportunities where design could have been more in dialogue with business, or could have influenced it better, but it didn't work out quite the way you expected. What happened? What was the outcome? And what did you learn?
Many, too many.
Leaders need to be vulnerable, so I am happy to share a time I was not successful. I've worked at a number of places. In addition, I actually spent time at Facebook working on the profile team there. And I want to tell the story of the very first design sprint I ran with that team. So I've worked at a bunch of different companies. I'm confident I know how to do these sprints. It's no problem. But what I didn't do a good enough job in was recognizing, when you're joining a new team, it's really important to make sure you understand the culture of the team. And even if you ask, the problem with culture is it's the thing that is in the water that people can't even tell you because it's just how things are. And so it's hard to communicate through any means other than osmosis. And so the way that I was used to running sprints included like starting with a large group which may have themes and ideating and diverging and then converging and then forming a smaller group which would ideate and express those ideas in a concrete way and then bring them back to the larger group. And I've used that process in a number of ways, but what I didn't know is in the culture of that team, they had an expectation that everyone was in all the steps all the way through, and it was a 40+ person group of people. And so the sprint started diverging and diverging and diverging, and it was really tough to converge when you have 40 people in the room trying to do that in like a 2-day period. The thing I learned from this was, and again, with hindsight, there's other ways we could have handled it. We could have done breakout sessions and done it in different ways, but I didn't know the culture of the team and the importance of bringing everybody through all of the steps rather than the front, bringing it down, summarizing it, working on it. Now, I don't know that that's the best model, but what's most important is what matters to the team and recognizing the cultures and values of the team and doing those things well. So that was one learning I had.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Micah, for your sharing, because that resonates a lot with me, right? This culture thing is highly sensitive and just takes time, right, to absorb. I think for me, right, I have a very specific example where, I can't share in a lot of details, because I want to keep the confidentialities, right? But I want to share the essence of it and to say it more broadly. So there was an instance where we did miss a business opportunity, and the very reason was because that we are dealing with a highly complex product, yet our prototype did not reflect the complexities of the interactions, right? That's happening on the platform. Because where our prototype was a little bit oversimplified, the actual user flow, so that we didn't get a concrete or accurate read, right, from the usability testing. Therefore, we had the wrong recommendation, basically, right? And we did not identify the actual problem. So that was really resulted in the business regression when we were doing the testing. And so that was one example where we did have an opportunity, right, to improve the business, and we missed it. But I think what was the outcome and what was the things we learned was really, I want to give the praise to the team. It was a super resilient and hardworking team. As the moment we find out, hey, something's wrong, we all jumped in to try to solve the problems. The data scientists try to pinpoint, hey, where is it wrong from a data's perspective? And the designers immediately, right, re-prototyped a super high fidelity model and to try to test that, and the research jumped in, right, try to reevaluate the research findings, etc. So I think the key thing we learned is, number one, that when you are dealing with very complex interactions or interface, make sure your prototype mimic the real experience as much as you can. And that is one reason when I was at Grab, we had UX engineers, because some highly complex product interface, you need to actually code it to have that real experience, like search, for example, like a map, for example, right? You can't, there's no shortcut. There is just hard work you have to go through. And the second learning is, don't bundle too many changes in one go, because when you launch something, right, there's too many changes. If something goes wrong, you actually don't know what's wrong. So the biggest learning of that experience is really break down of all the things you want to build and release them one by one. So give some time so that you can actually really pinpoint which part is not working. So that's the learning we have.